we have something very interesting to talk about. We are going to talk about the technology perspective and capability roadmap that was issued just a few, I would say, weeks ago, or rather a couple of weeks ago. And the thing is that there are a lot of interesting things there which should be discussed, because it's essentially an Indian industry which will have to meet these needs or service these needs in concert with DRDO. Obviously, I mean, DRDO is already leading the development of a number of items listed on this TPCR 2025 document. There are, of course, other items where ab initio development will have to be done by industry partners. I mean, industrial players in India, which is, of course, of interest, which is, of course, of keen interest. But generally speaking, the document it gives you an idea of where warfare itself is heading. There are some things there which are a bit ambitious. Some things there which are essentially very low hanging fruit, if I may say. If I may use the term very to qualify low hanging fruit. And some of them, as I mentioned earlier, are already being done by DRDO anyway. So without wasting further time, I think we should now turn to some of the more interesting elements in the TPCR 2025. So Sriram, why don't you take us to that whole supersonic UAV part, because UCAV part, because that sort of ties in with one of your pet or one of your wish list items anyway. Okay, we can discuss that and look at what that is about.
Sure.
So let's go there first. Yeah.
Okay. While I pull that thing up, right? So
Yeah.
this is something we've been asking for a long time. Not just for the land war, but sort of an airborne system for targeting throughout the Indian Ocean region. Because people tend to forget the fact that we are on a very, very busy shipping lane, right? From the Middle East around the African coast to Eastern Asia, and a lot of oil goes through this region, and
It's the world's busiest shipping lane, by the way, if you keep aside.
yeah, pretty much. And a lot of cargo, oil, all of that goes through. So, and it is pretty much our backyard, right? So everywhere from the coast of Africa and Arabia, all the way to Indonesia, I would say maybe even all the way to Australia, is pretty much an area of interest for us. So, being able to see this entire mass of ocean, keeping tabs of everybody on the surroundings on the edge of this region, and being able to hit anything that you want to hit, right? That is, I would say, very, very important for us. So let me find that thing. Yeah. So
anyway, you go to that.
Our current means of targeting anything on the surface or subsurface today is we can see them through our LRMP, which is the P8I, and our vast surface and subsurface fleet, right? Destroyers and frigates and corvettes and everybody, and submarines. And now we have a land-based system called the LRASHM and the SMART, right? Both of them are based on, both of them are based on ballistic missiles. Those are expensive, right? So it's not exactly an air-launched cruise missile that you can just launch in the hundreds.
Look, before you turn to this whole A2AD architecture, why don't you pull up that supersonic drone thing first?
Yeah, that's I'm trying to find it.
Okay, find it quickly.
Yeah.
So
this is pretty much why we've been asking for that 4-engine heavy bomber, which can
no, once again, not me. You have been asking for it. Okay, so let us qualify that. But anyway, that's your wish list.
But
okay, that's on your wish list. So
that is something that is immediately retargetable, right? So you can designate a target and hit it quickly but cheaper than having a whole host of land-based ballistic missiles that you can lob at anything at sea, be it on the surface or below. Sort of, can you just take it over? I'll find that quickly.
Okay. While Sriram sort of tries to find that entry on the supersonic UCAV that we talked about, we need to be clear about something. He was, of course, talking about the need to maintain overwatch over various sea lines of communication in the Indian Ocean region, which is of critical interest, importance to not just India, but the global economy in general. Now, he talked about, he mentioned this thing about us having to keep overwatch till the shores of Australia. I would say it's beyond that. Antarctica is of great interest to India as well. So ultimately, when you talk about the Indian Ocean, and when you talk about India's interests in the Indian Ocean region, you're talking about all the way to the Kerguelen Islands, right off the coast of Africa, Antarctica, which are controlled by the French, and then the northern coastline of Antarctica itself, seen from our perspective. So this is a vast expanse. Of course, shipping lanes don't go that far south, because that's you don't want to go beyond the roaring 40s really into the furious 50s and then the screaming 60s. So you should remember one thing: the waters just above the coast of Antarctica, they are characterized by the screaming 60s, because there is no landmass to stop global wind circulation over there, right? Everywhere else, wind gets checked. No, I mean, not everywhere else. As you go up, go to a higher latitude, it definitely gets checked. But over there's nothing to check it. So there is this huge global air circulation that happens. And so, there's no point in talking about shipping lanes there, because there aren't any there, obviously, for obvious reasons. So here we come to the stealth UCAV part of
from
it.
the 7th standard geography lesson. Let's come to this, right? Let's touch upon this first before we go on to serious things. So one of the wants, right, in the whole TPCR, which is a 15-year prospective plan on capabilities that the armed forces want over the next 15 years to induct, as well as start looking at. One of them is the stealth UCAV, something that would have 20 to 25 years of life, and the Indian Air Force wants 40 to 50 units. The Army wants 90 to 100. Why?
No, one second. Here we are assuming that this is not a typo. Okay, it could well be the other way around also, right? So here we are simply assuming that this is not a mistake. It might be a mistake for all you know. So
okay.
With that,
even if it's the other way around, I don't know. Why the Army wants any units at all is a huge question in my mind. It could have been the Navy for that matter. Anyway, so if you look at the specs, right, or the requirements broadly, supersonic, super cruise, low observable in all spectrum, highly maneuverable, sustained high G. So essentially something that can beat anything in the air, like an out-and-out fighter, right? So should carry 4 tons of air-to-air and or air-to-surface weaponry internally, and have MUMT, manned and unmanned teaming capability in the loyal wingman role. So given that it is a UCAV, which means it's unmanned, this thing will fly along with or ahead or as part of a global, local network of aircraft which are both manned and unmanned. Anyway, programmable flight profile, including AI-enabled avionics. Okay, all of this is fine. Targeting systems using LPI radar, EOIR, SWIR, using during offensive and defensive maneuvers. Par for course, because anything that you put on up in the air will need some sort of sensor, either for navigation and threat perception, right? So anything from the smaller UCAV-ish loitering munitions all the way to something this big will have sensors, like the CATS series of weaponry, right? So low latency electronics, secure sat links for beyond line of sight, and if in line of sight of 300 kilometers from surface or aerial platforms. So yeah, satellite capability, which means it has to be a big platform anyway to carry 4 tons internally. Conformal defensive electronic expendable stores, again chaff CMDS, should be able to carry out autonomous aerial refueling, max ceiling of not less than 15 kilometers. uh, 15 kilometers, okay.
But when
So
you look at this, the 15 kilometers is fine, but when
yeah,
you it has to fly higher anyway for you
range.
know yeah. They don't mention the range here, which is important because some of these things will definitely eat into the range of this system. That 4,000 kg internal weapons bay itself will mean that there will not be a lot left around for fuel, because you're not talking about a flying wing design here. You want it to be supersonic. Like, flying wing designs are not really compatible with supersonic flight. The wave drag becomes too high if you try to, as you try to penetrate the sound barrier. And also, you must remember that the center of pressure in a flying wing, when something goes supersonic, shifts to the back. Okay, things tend to pitch downwards like this, and especially in a flying wing. So this is not going to be a flying wing, obviously. Okay, but at the same time, 4,000 kgs, right? And super cruise, that is the most important thing. They just don't want supersonic speeds. Now, I'll tell you something. Doing super cruise with gas turbines, even variable cycle engine gas turbines, even, I mean, fifth generation plus gas turbines, is not easy. Doing super cruise at Mach 1.3 with a gas turbine with is not easy. It's just not easy. It's one of the challenges of gas turbine, I mean, low bypass or turbofan technology. So if you want to meet all of these specs, you really need some other kind of propulsive scheme, not the typical gas turbine only. You will probably need a combined cycle system for this. You will need a gas turbine for takeoff and landing for basically zero speed thrust, and you will have to transition to something else for supersonic speeds. Now, as we know that now here's the big thing. What will transition to, what will you use to transition to supersonic speeds? Because to go to super, first of all, your no ramjet can be ignited before Mach 1.8, Mach 2, really. Okay, and no scramjet can be ignited before Mach 4 plus. And that is, I'm saying, conservatively. I mean, Russians did some tests very long ago. Most people try to ignite the scramjet at Mach 6 plus, as we try to do with our tests and stuff like that. So then what is going to meet all this? Now you are going to argue this is basically a clarion call for four-engined bomber that you are talking about. Okay, your four-engine bomber comes in here, but four-engine bomber packaged into a non-flying wing structure is also going to be funny. And you can't really have a flying wing because you want supersonic flight, right? So this is a very interesting entry. And the best part is that, DRDO, the bottom, it says remarks by DRDO under development. that is the most interesting part of this entry. So given that this will require a lot of trade-offs to be reconciled somehow, I'm wondering when this commence development really. Okay, when this, because if this is successful with that monster payload bay, okay, it's basically going to be unique. It's going to be one of a kind. There is no UCAV which will meets these specs right now. And you see, I'll tell you, somebody will point to that whole parade that the Chinese did where they show two kinds of supposedly supersonic UCAVs, right?
Hmm.
And although I have my doubts about it, one had DSI intakes, one had standard carrot intakes. Okay, but the thing is, we must remember one thing: DSI intakes are also not very really good for Mark 2 plus or anything. I mean, DSI intakes have been tested till Mark 2. They are low observable, obviously. They come with the territory. So in those UCAVs, if you have seen, there was one which seemed to depict a bay with 6 air-to-air missiles.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in that kind of a platform, even if I say, suppose that this is some really serious project that the Chinese are doing and not some Soviet era gimmick where they show, all kinds of projects that are at different stages of development, although that might well be the case. there will be a trade-off in terms of range. The performance, the payload performance, and the attendant and the concomitant speed performance, if it has to be maintained, then that's a huge challenge. And I wonder what will be used to power such a thing. Okay, and what materials will it be made of? So these are all, questions. These are all questions that we need to sort of examine. Maybe we'll examine it in another episode. But by any yardstick, this is a very interesting entry, the most interesting entry, I would say, in this TPCR thing.
Yeah,
Your thoughts?
even for a gigantic platform like the Su-30 or the F-15, uh, or the next generation equivalent of the Su-30 is the Su-57, the fill-in, right? So even for something that big, the internal weapons bay obviously cannot carry 4 tons, right? So even in an all-out maxed out role for the Su-30 MKI, all of that would go on external weapons bay, hard points, right? So trying to cram 4 tons into an internal weapons bay would mean that it has to be pretty big. And to cart something that big, the platform itself has to be pretty heavy, right? So heavier than the Su-30 and the Su-57, obviously. So you can imagine the power plant challenges to super cruise and do insane amount of high G maneuvers. So that would call into the structures having to be capable of such high G's maneuvering. So obviously you need them to be stronger, better materials, heavier maybe. So yeah, we're looking at something that is insane, but yeah, fun in a fun way.
But if somehow it can be done, okay, if it can be done somehow, then it's a strategic game changer for certain. If it can be
Four
done somehow.
tons, 4 tons
Yeah.
could even be an airborne strategic role also. So
Well, yes, it could be, but again, that brings us back to that question: that is the why is the IA interested in this? Okay, so that is
yeah, I
the
mean, you could say that the air to surface part of things interests them, but again, uh, anything more than a helicopter should not really be their game. But we never know.
of course it
It
could
could be the
always be
IN
the
also.
case that there are going to be essentially, the this is not expected to really fly anywhere near 4 tons in the air to air role. Maybe in the air to air role it will be restricted to 1.5 tons only. Okay,
Could be, yeah.
that 4 ton is essentially just as a bombing truck, as a stealthy
Mud mover,
bombing
yeah.
truck. Yeah, whether it'll actually fly supersonic then or not, also we don't know. Okay, with that 4 ton capability and stuff like that, but it
Still needs to
definitely
get off
can't
the
be a
ground,
fly.
yeah.
Yeah, but it can't be a flying wing design. It's not a flying wing design. And without a flying wing design, putting in 4 tons into a, so you then end up with maybe two bays. Okay, instead of having one large fat central bay, you will need a couple of bays in sequence with each other. That is how you
No,
will have to approach this problem.
I mean, see,
So
even sorry to interrupt, but I just thought about it. For the mud mover role, why would you need a brand new UCAV when you have the Ghatak or the UCAV program already? That thing is
because
a
the
Tejas light sized aircraft, which can maybe carry 1 ton. And it is
yeah, but
unmanned anyway. So build more of
in
them.
the in the mud mover role, it might not be able to deliver the kind of payload. These guys are putting a premium on payload over here, and for the air to ground work, they basically want to use three or four of this to entirely flatten Pakistani airfields as soon as possible. Because see, in a two front war, what is our agenda? Our
Hmm.
agenda, if we find ourselves in a two front war, would be to knock out the Pakistanis. I mean, severely degrade them within the first 48 hours, 48 to 72 hours. So, our entire mantra should be on systems which can deliver pinpoint attacks in volume, right? So, basically, with very high probability of arrival over target. That is what we want to do. And after that, the game shifts in our favor because of the limitations of the Tibetan plateau and all that. Even if they throw 800 fighters as us and the PLARF, if we have sufficient, munitions, sufficient long range munitions, long range vectors, we will more than hold our own. Combined with our infantry units, which are now, we'll have an eagle in every arm, and we'll have a whole bunch of drones, FPV and FPV with fiber optic drones, which are being optimized for the Himalayas. Any kind of ground attack against target of value will be a non-starter basically by the Chinese. So
Yeah.
and if you can plaster their air bases, then they can't humiliate us in the sort of the blow trading kind of war either, where you
Yeah.
just trade long range blows with each other, non-contact warfare, because they'll attack our grids, maybe they'll attack airports, they'll attack dual use airports also, so on and so forth. But we will be able to hit them in depth. See, a lot of things are in Sichuan province at the moment, Sichuan province, right? So if we can plaster that place in depth, and we can hit, say, Chengdu aircraft, basically
Yeah.
the
Aviation
Chengdu
complex.
Chengdu part of their AVIC, right? So they are going to be in trouble, which is why we need long range vectors, and we need them en masse, right? We
Correct.
need them en masse. So that's the whole point. And this, I think, is part of that as well. I think this 4 kg, the 4 ton,
Photon.
but getting 4 tons to 2000 kilometers with all the super cruise and all, I don't think that's that's another thing altogether.
No,
Okay, I think.
see, 4 tons is 2 Rudram 3,
Yeah.
maybe 3 Rudram 2, and do you know, 4,000 by 250, somebody do the math. That's like 4,416, right? So that's 16 saw individual units. So it's like one bomber can take out an entire airfield,
Yeah,
on
but
its
see,
own.
here there's a giveaway over here. Okay, line of sight distance of 300 kilometers. So you are going to operate a super stealthy UCAV, okay, which is apparently capable of supersonic speeds, and you want a line of sight operating distance of 300 kilometers. Now, one can say this is for
Nay,
recovery and
from
for
surface
uh,
or aerial platforms. Yeah.
aerial platforms, yeah. But I think this shows the army part of the requirement as well, this 300-kilometer line of sight business. So when we talk about this platform, we are not really talking about going all the way to Chengdu with it. Okay, we are talking about more operational level targets being prosecuted by it, but quickly, and with and being able to put them out of commission. And the idea is to put them out of commission quickly as well. For Chengdu and all, we need the rocket force, our own rocket force, with the systems you were mentioning, LRA, SHM type systems, and of course other systems which are in development and will be in development very soon. So those kinds of things. What else do we have here in this
A lot
section?
of space-based systems.
Yeah, let's go to turn to those things.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So we are. You see, the report also contains a lot of these things, right? So one thing that I really stood out was DIRCM for transports and helicopters. Right now, our helis and nearly every transport that we've bought, the DIRCMs come from outside. So that is something that I hope some company picks it up and runs with it, because every platform that the Air Force and the Army that puts in the air will need one. At least the business sense is definitely there in that the numbers, volume that you will move is insane. Yeah, let me get this off. Yeah. Let me find it.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
the
What
other,
do you say?
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so okay, let me just look at what people are saying, because we haven't been here. Okay, the people seem to be quite excited to be here. What was the good news? What that was promised? The good news is underway, and it will be revealed in due course of time. And when I say due course of time, not after, it is declassified after the 100 years or something. It's nothing of that sort. It relates to us, but it is good news. Believe me, it is very important, and we will share it. And the work for it is already underway. Okay, and somebody says, "Oh, please adopt me, Saurav." Yeah, well, we might not be able to adopt you, but if you are
Yeah, we both
useful,
have
we
kids, and
might.
that's expensive enough.
if you are useful, we might be able to hire you for something in service of this country. Okay. Next question is Siddharth question. Some questions I'd be glad if you guys could answer. Any updates on Rudram 2? Okay. Have I lost it again? Can you hear me? I hope you can hear
Yeah,
me,
I
right?
can hear you.
Yeah. Then what is the problem? So, some questions I'd be glad if you guys could answer. Any updates on Rudram 2 and 3 deployment, mass production? 2, does Saurav finally feel a little bit blackpilled about the LCM Mark 2 at least? Okay. LCM Mark 2, yeah, the timelines can't keep slipping. That is for certain. Okay. This constantly shifting timelines of 28, 29, this will not do. The prototypes that are being created for the Mark 2 are supposed to be close to production level, close to production level standard to begin with. So if we stick to that, and if we get it off the ground somewhere in 26 also, in late 26, we are all right. But if it just keeps shifting 27, 28, and beyond, then yes, then I will feel a little black pilled. I agree with you. Ajay, any updates on Rudram 2 and Rudram 3 deployment, mass production? Rudram 2, I think you will is closer to production than Rudram 3. Although in the case of Rudram 3, release trials and all have happened, as you know. It was in the HAL annual report as well. Okay, so we brought this up again. Have we brought what we needed? No, haven't found
Yeah,
it yet.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
let me
yeah,
take.
yeah. It's ready. Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay,
So the first
okay.
space-based thing that I noticed was point number 18. Right. So surveillance detection and tracking systems for targets at hypersonic speed. So the requirement is capable to detect and track low RCS targets at hypersonic speed at high altitude and long range. System should be either ground, airborne, or space, or a combination of all three. Should be integrated into the ISCCS that the Air Force currently runs. So we are moving into I know it says ground, space, airborne, and everything, but the space part of it is pretty interesting to note. We've had reports that the SBS3 program is going to go ahead, where in the next 5 years we're going to launch a whole host of satellites for all sorts of purposes, right? Earth observation, communications for the military and strategic purposes, as well as ELINT and SIGINT sort of roles. So this would go into your EO kind of satellites that already are planned for, right? Perhaps geostationary and a mix of geo and LEO satellites. So the US currently has a new architecture where they have a layered structure, and they also have this as one of their items that they need to check, right? So in their architecture, we're
OPIR,
doing something similar.
yeah, overhead persistent infrared. Okay,
Yeah, from SBIR,
that is,
they've changed the name.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. OPIR. That's
correct.
the successor to SBIR high
Mm.
and SBIR low. Yeah.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin is sending up 3 satellites, the huge bus site satellites and all. So yeah, you can look it up. It's very interesting. So we hypersonic stuff going through the low Earth orbit or high altitude stratosphere obviously create a lot of heat. So it should be trackable on EO sensors from low Earth or maybe even higher MEO or GEO satellites. Persistent staring sensors are being developed and have been developed actually for the IR bands. So they should be something that can constantly keep an eye on areas of interest and provide launch warning to the networks for them to take decisions thereafter. And yeah, that was one. And
No, one second. Let me stay there just a second.
which one?
So go back to the persistent staring array thing.
Yeah, this one. Point number 18.
Yeah. Yeah. This would not only would you require something like that next generation OPIR, which was mentioned just 2 minutes ago, you will also require things which can, change their orbits. Okay. So you would require certain packages on something like something similar to the X-37B. for this to which will have to work in concert with other concepts like formation flying satellites, etc., etc., and all that, and the typical traditional kind of sensing satellites also, EOIR satellites that you've seen in that SBIRS kind of scheme. So this is actually something of critical importance, and this thing will have to be sort of it will have to be rolled out fairly quickly. I mean, you can't wait till 2035 to have elements of this in place. It's, I think, 2029, 30 is the sort of upper limit for having at least phase one in place. You cannot go beyond that, because then you will be in a bit of bother. But one thing is there, one thing is there, apart from things that have cross range capability in space, the need for a fast moving ISR drone remains. If you've seen those reports, right, about things relocating themselves during Operation Sindoor, etc. So even with the kind of space based sensing capability the Chinese have, there are gaps you can exploit. Of course, it's combined with your own ESM capabilities and your ability to analyze traffic flow from one place to another, via space and all that, but subject to all that. But ultimately, satellites in predictable orbits are well predictable. Okay, so you need to have a mix of systems, and you will we this country definitely needs something like the Chinese DR8, the WZ8 drone kind of thing. Of course, the DR8 uses just, I think, UDMH and N2O4. I
Yeah,
mean,
rocket motors.
traditionally, yeah, traditional liquid propellants for its rocket motors. You could have things with you could have it again. The combined cycle thing can come back in and all that. That can be looked at for something like that. Or you can even do it with UDMH and N2O for yourself. You're not a stranger to that kind of those propellants
Correct.
either. But something like that needs to be explored now, in my view, because and it can be launched of a transport jet. It can, you obviously, work will have to a lot of work will go in there in terms of carriage compatibility, in terms of carriage, in terms of release and all that. But that's also something that can be looked at. Okay, we are going to something else.
Yeah, the number of units 10 to 15. So that is reasonably large.
No,
Uh,
20 to
pe-
20, no, 10 to 15 only.
yeah,
Okay.
10 to
Ah,
15. 20
yeah.
to 25 is the expected
Is
age of the
the
system.
expect
So
time,
10 to
yeah.
15, even
But
that must be a mix of different,
not enough,
orbits.
I would say, not enough. If you have to, because we are, see, electronically and in terms of non-contact warfare, we are now faced with a single front from Kibitu to Karachi. Okay, that's
Hmm.
a single front, essentially, electronically speaking. Obviously, there are the Himalayas, there are mountain ranges here, there, and everywhere, and there are gaps. There are many gaps in terms of even non-contact warfare. There are many gaps. It's not like one continuous segment. But no, if I were to broadly speak broadly about it, we are faced with one front now, from Kibitu to Karachi. And so the kind of coverage that we need is also going to be pretty extensive. It is not something, and then there is the issue of looking down into the Indian Ocean itself, because the Chinese are going to deploy, have they already have one cruise missile submarine, right? One of the Shang class is a Type 95G. It's a cruise missile carrier.
Hmm.
In the future, they will have more of these cruise missile carriers with them, right? So this problem of pop-up launches from somewhere in the Bay of Bengal or further south in the Indian Ocean is always a possibility that India is faced with now.
Yeah, of
Okay,
Indonesia even.
yeah, and the pop-up launches will not be of some slow flying turbojet or turbofan powered cruise missile like the Tomahawk. It
Mhm.
would be of a hypersonic vector. Okay, and there would be a bunch of hypersonic vectors being launched, maybe in ripple mode. So for that, we have to be ready for that. For future readiness, not just as we are extending our underwater net further into the Indian Ocean with IO5 and all that, and also our radar stations and all, we will have to have a space based architecture looking down, and those operationally responsive kind of ISR aircraft like the DR8. So, I mean, all of this is very expensive. Ultimately, it's not cheap. But if it is done indigenously, A, the money will stay in India. It will be cheaper than if you have to procure it from elsewhere, and it will give a major fillip to the economy. See, because if somebody is talking about being Atmanirbhar and basically meeting our needs indigenously, then these are going to be needs, whether we like it or not. Security spending is a need for a country like India, for a country of 1.4 billion people. Okay,
Yeah, I
go to something
mean,
else.
just to
Yeah.
add to that point, right? So, um, one second, let me just show this.
Okay. Meanwhile,
So,
let me just
we're
thanks
at Car
people.
Nicobar, right? From Car Nicobar, 1500 is all the way in the middle of, on the other side of Malaysia, right? To almost Jakarta, right? Southern Sumatra. That's a long way away. You can have a sub parked here and launch whatever and then get lost back to South China Sea. So,
Unless, of
yeah.
course, you have your our own SSNs on station at the Ombi Vatar Straits, which is where they are going to try and come in through. Okay,
Yeah, there
this
are the
is where they
Sunda
are going to try and
Straits.
come in.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ombi
there are the
Vatar is
Sunda
where they are
Straits and
going to
all the
try and
other
cover.
straits.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
So we need,
that's the
yeah.
plan.
So the whole point is that even 6 SSNs will not do. We'll probably need double that number, because at
Correct.
any time 1/3 of the fleet will be under refurbishment. I mean, under maintenance, right, and repair.
Yeah.
So the needs, what we are seeing is that the needs for high-end warfare, India's requirements for high-end warfare are continuously increasing. High-end warfare system, basically high-end deterrence packages. Because see, ultimately, given that India is not a country that is looking to invade X, Y, Z and project power on the heads of various governments, our main raison for all this is deterrence. We are into the business of deterrence. Of course, we are also in the business of defeating the enemies, in the event that deterrence fails. But our main priority is to maintain deterrence, right? Because we are status quoist, we are ultimately peace loving, we are not looking to bomb people into oblivion or anything. So and so forth. So, but deterrence comes at a price. Maintaining peace is not going to be easy or cheap. And if you continue to rely on others for all this, because you have very specific kinds of needs and you're facing a very specific operational environment, you get into it right now. This is the point time at which you get into it. So basically, see, the what I'm saying right now is, of course, par for the course when you talk about indigenization appreciation hour. But we are going to keep reiterating this nonetheless, right? We will reiterate this every now and then, because there's no option. There are no easy choices over here. You have to do all this. You have to
Correct.
build this capability. Yeah.
Okay. Next one on the list is the Stratospheric airship. Now, this is different from the HAPS program, which we'll get to. The airship is just something analogous to the aerostats that we used to have. Now, we do have a program currently underway at one of the DRDO labs for this. And
ADRD.
yeah, ADRD is doing it, and they are progressing pretty well. There was a conference earlier this year where they had a presentation, and they expect this to go through without too many hiccups, hopefully. But yeah, this is another program that is underway. It doesn't have a comment from the DRDO, but we know that it is underway. Communication relay, collect SIGINT data, ELINT, right, and comment. Steering between 25 and 35 kilometers, SATCOM, radio relay, 600 kilometer line of sight. I mean, obviously, if it's way high up at 45 kilometers, 35 kilometers, then it'll have a tremendous line of sight. And obviously, SATCOM also. But yeah, this is another thing that
No, but
they're
it's
looking at.
interesting because look at it. It doesn't say lighter than air anywhere, by the way. Okay. It says stratospheric airship. It could be, you could look at a hybrid kind of system also, what is called a hybrid airship, right?
No, I mean, even the aerostat kind of thing still has onboard motors for station keeping and
No,
everything.
no.
But
When
the
I say
best part
hybrid,
is what I've forgotten to highlight. programmable flight profile, including AI capable of usage of avionics and queuing targeting systems for buddy mode targeting. Let me just
Yeah,
highlight
yeah.
that.
But I'll tell
This.
you, when I say a hybrid airship, now what I mean is basically something which has the features of both a lighter than airship and also what used to be called an aerodyne. Okay, that
Mm,
is what I'm talking about, because
okay.
in this case the hull may not be made of collapsible material, and may not be made of things which are which will lead to a lighter than air package per se. I mean, the
Okay.
overall thing will, for it
Mm.
to sort of float
Actually,
in
stay
the
up for
air,
a long time. Yeah.
yeah, stay up for a long time. So I'll tell you, the US Army had this long endurance multi intelligence vehicle program many years ago. At that time, in fact, I'll tell you a fun story. I'll share it with people. The at one point, and not at one point, although I will get to writing them, as I will get to writing everything eventually. But I was writing a series of techno thrillers. Okay, right, and it was a trilogy, and the third part of the trilogy was going to be based on these sort of stratospheric airships. Ah, and at that time, I had I'd done a lot of research on the LEMV program and all that. At that time, the whole idea was to get 500 kgs or 1,000 tons all the way from the continental United States to Afghanistan, okay, and Iraq and theaters. This is what the Americans were in at that time. So you can imagine how far back this whole idea was born of the techno thrillers and all that. So that is when this whole thing came up, this whole thing about stratospheric airships and stuff like that, and hybrid airships. Okay, so the what I said, basically an airship and an aerodyne hybridize with each other. So the approach would be similar to a lifting body in an aircraft. A lifting body in an aircraft is what the approach for getting things off. I mean, the P791, Lockheed Martin P791 and all followed this approach. So I don't know. We don't know exactly what we are looking at here. We might be looking at a completely non-rigid structure, but we might be looking at a semi-rigid structure also. Although we don't know this for a
Yeah,
fact.
I mean, there
Okay.
is a and somewhat close enough example from recent times. Remember the big balloon that was sent over the continental United States
Yeah,
from the
yeah, yeah,
Chinese
yeah,
with
yeah.
huge solar panels, and they had trouble locking onto it from the fighter, and then they had to find a means to shoot it down, right? So something like that. So if we are thinking about buddy mode targeting from our own things, this is something that our own air force needs to be wary of, uh, and something that the Chinese could well be looking at, because we know that they've talked about buddy mode targeting through AVAX. They even put out a video after Operation Sindoor on this particular thing, showing how this is done, about an HQ-9 or whatever surface-to-air missile system on the ground, and a fighter in the air, and an AVAX, and everybody talking together for cued targeting of an enemy fighter, where the mid-course guidance and everything else is, two-way data link is done with the missile from the AVAX instead of the fighter. The fighter is just the launch platform. So something like this could also be done. They are talking about AMTI also. So, this is something that we also need to get cracking on. So there's no point in penny pinching, giving them 5 crores and telling them to do something and come back after 5 years. There are so many programs that we need to focus on, fund adequately, so that they don't do chindigiri on these programs where they have to do all up tests for everything, and have to worry about where the money is going to come from for some particular thing, not building redundancies. There are so many things that you have to do suboptimally if you do not have enough funding. So let's hope R&D budget goes up, and some of these programs are also given to the private sector, right? So either as a Make One program itself or as DCPPs, there's no point in crying that the private sector isn't doing anything when practically zero Make One programs have actually gotten started. So at least big ones, let alone the small ones.
Okay,
Anyway,
before we turn to more entries, let us just take a few of the
questions?
questions.
Sure.
So, Siddharth Kumar is saying, thank you for your contribution, generous contribution, and I would urge others to follow suit, and follow, emulate Siddharth Kumar and support the channel. So,
Thanks,
anyway, he
man.
says, love you guys. Thank you. Thoughts on other upcoming NOTAM? Some people are saying Rudram 4. Thoughts on supposed Meteor integration on second batch of Mark 1A. Well, you heard what the HAL chief had to. I'll take the second thing first. Well, you heard what the HAL chief had to say about Meteor integration during that interview with NDTV. So I guess that is something that they're seriously looking at. But
No, he
integrating
said
foreign
Air Force wanted
weapons,
it.
yeah, so that's something they're definitely looking at, I think.
Hmm.
So, but in the past, the MBDA and company have not been very forthcoming on this aspect, because I remember talk about this several years ago also, where there was talk of integrating the Meteor onto both the Tejas Mark 1, the Mark 1A platform, and the Su-30 MKI, but that didn't happen. But I can say one thing, given that how long it has taken to integrate the Meteor onto something else. So, I mean, I would rather say that, our things should be given priority over here. So, what do I mean by our things? Obviously, not just Astra Mark 1, which in any case is something they have to integrate fire and show that it can successfully prosecute relevant targets before this whole thing, this whole pipeline starts moving of Tejas Mark 1A deliveries. I'm talking about the Astra Mark 2, and of course the what is called the Gandiva or the Astra Mark 3. I think those programs need to be really fast tracked now. And by fast tracking, when you talk about fast tracking, what do you mean by fast tracking? It means that there should be platform availability, there should be enough number of LSPs sanctioned, there should be testing, right, with everybody pulling in the same direction. That is what is required. Rudram 2, Rudram 3, Astra Mark 2, Astra Mark 3. Getting these into service as soon as possible should be a should be an uppermost priority for India, not just the Air Force and DRDO. Should be an uppermost priority for the government, I would say. These are sine qua non if you want to, basically keep the enemy at bay, and do more than keep the enemy at bay. Astra Mark 3 and Rudram Mark 3 will do more than just keep the enemy at bay. They are highly capable systems and next generation systems. So we need to hasten that. And the first thing is, on some people are saying Rudram Mark 4. Let's wait for this. Okay, let's not try to get into Rudram Mark 4 and all that stuff like that. There has been a lot of talk that there is a Rudram Mark 4, etc. Let's see how it goes. Okay, that
Yeah,
is
there's
what
no
I would have
clarity
to
as of
say.
now as to what
Yeah,
it is. So
yeah,
until
yeah,
then, let's keep quiet.
yeah. So let's just see how it goes. Let the powers that be, let DRDO, let the government disclose whatever they want to disclose. Okay, Swapnil Siddesh Pandey, thank you for your contribution as well. He says, slightly off topic. Any comments on the just announced tender for 4 indigenous amphibious warships today by the Navy? I'd written an article on this whole LHD LPD business. Maybe I'll update that and put it out. Thing is that I'll make only one comment. Okay, I haven't seen the RFI. I hope the RFI talks about hosting many more unmanned systems on board than the older RFI, because the older RFI talked about only two NSUAS basically. But now I think whatever we are going into, first of all, it should be an LHD, right? It should have it should not be an LPD. I mean, it should have a through deck and it should have a well deck both, as is the case with the LHD. LHD is of course a US Navy hull classification type, and it should be something that should be seen as a drone carrier. It should not just be seen as something meant for amphibious warfare. There will obviously be trade-offs involved when you put a requirement like this, but I think given the needs of today's operational environment and the operational environment that is forthcoming in the Indian Ocean region, we must look at these as more than just enablers of over the horizon amphibious assault. And even to make that happen, these things will have to be drone carriers. Okay, what do you have now? What were you pointing to?
No, no, nothing.
uh,
Um, I think we're done with questions, or do you want to go back to the report?
yeah, let's go back to the report.
Yeah, let's look at a couple of other things. Yeah. So multi-band programmable RF sensor for satellites, right? So there are lots of these um, ELINT focused missions for satellites. So this was one of them. Uh, Again, for detecting RF sources from LEO. So you have a LEO satellite with an RF sensor, but you have two or five. I don't know, man. Um, yeah, intercept parameters are usually emitter identification, time, directional of a DOA, frequency, PRF, all of that stuff. Um, Usually these are done by formation flying satellites. So 2 to 5, I don't know. You need entire constellations of these flying in, 2 or 3 together. Again, communication satellites in LEO 50 to 670. So at least they're looking at something like a star shield for the Indian military. So a whole constellation in low Earth orbit that can do satellite communication roles for practically the entire armed forces and strategic community.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
don't think
sorry.
50 to 70 may not suffice. In any
Maybe
case,
it's
our
tranche
plan,
one.
in our case, the plan is also to deploy a 2000 plus, but that is of course for civilian users. 2000 plus multi-satellite constellation.
Hmm.
That is the latest plan, because
Yeah, and
people want to match what the Chinese are attempting with their AI
hmm.
enabled, you know, star compute, basically constellation that they have begun sending up examples of now. I mean,
Yeah,
elements
and
of.
this is for 15 years. So ideally, you should have numbers that you're looking at over the next 15 years. 50 to 70 seems pretty
Yeah,
low. Again,
yeah,
on orbit maintenance and refueling. So it could be a spacecraft or satellite payload that can do repair, maintenance,
but this has
refueling.
to be
Add
demonstrated very soon. This
Correct.
has to
Yeah,
be
I mean we've
demonstrated
we've
very soon.
done docking now with our two experimental satellites. The hope is that ISRO can hasten up that procedure, and we can go to fuel transfer, power transfer, grabbing. Their robotic arm program is also going on. So grabbing satellites in orbit, all of those need to be done. But again, see, just like we keep crying that the defense R&D side of things are woefully underfunded, even ISRO has the same problems, right? So all of these programs are of strategic nature. These should be probably funded from the MOD budget to do all of these. And let's not forget, right? So the whole servicing, maintenance, and refueling aspect of in orbit also has civilian use. So commercial use, right? So that technology also needs to be developed for non-strategic use also. So these things need to be expedited. ISRO can't keep working on a shoestring budget and say, we developed this technology for cheaper than a Hollywood movie.
By
That
any,
cannot continue.
yeah, absolutely, by any conservative estimate, ISRO's budget needs to be increased by 3x now. Otherwise we are kidding ourselves. Okay. I'll, this while they're talking about orbital propellant depots, this is not going to be needed. While LEO will be okay for demonstration and for LEO warfare, but you need to be able to deploy such things at Lagrange points in the future on the way to the moon, because the Earth Moon system is going to become a single contested sort of interplanetary space, if you like, although I'm talking about between a satellite and its planet. But that whole cislunar arena is going to be militarized sooner than later. People are not spending billions to go back to the moon simply to plant a flag over there, and take some pictures of stars from there. The colonization of the moon will begin in right earnest, and colonization means conflict. So conflict in cislunar space is going to be a reality very much within our lifetimes, in fact even before we really become old. So this is the kind of future we have to prepare for. There is no reason to think that the powers on Earth are not going to fight on the moon. Okay, they will fight for the moon and on the moon. Somebody will say, fighting for the moon is daft. Fighting on the moon is daft, stupid, can't happen. A lot of these things are initially said, especially by the academic community. But the strategic community behaves in a very different way from all this, which is, of course, also roundly critiqued by said academic communities. But then they are academic after all, they are not the ones who are doing all this. So while their critiques may be useful and need to be looked at the end of the day, these things tend to, basically take up assume a life of their own. This is what happens. And this is what we must keep in mind. The reason why this TPCR document is important, because it shows that the Indian military has begun to understand the nature of the evolving geopolitical scape, which is not going to remain geopolitical, but is going to start including, not just low Earth orbit, which is what we are going to see to begin with, high Earth orbit, and then cislunar space itself. So that is where we are headed. And the Earth's powers are not going to come together for the exploitation of, solar resources just like that. If some alien threat emerges tomorrow from somewhere, yes, they'll unite. But before that happens, you can be rest assured they are going to contest each other. They are not going to be in consonance with each other when it comes to exploiting resources in deep space. Right? So it goes like that. What was the next
Um,
thing?
yeah, I mean, I hope people saw all of this, right? Propellant storage, maintenance, all of that. And another neat thing that they want to do, probably to cut down cost and up manufacturing rates, is a multi-payload configurable bus, where you do not build satellites tailor-made for each particular payload, but have a common framework that can be rapidly built out and in bulk, bringing down costs. And then you can integrate payloads as required, EO, comms, ELINT, SAR maybe, right? And have a common bus for that. Yeah, the idea seems good as long as intelligent people sit down and work it out and get it done. It should have, a good chance of at least getting a major commonality, even if there are tweaks that are needed for payload wise tweaks. So yeah, again, extremely high frequency geosatellite for secure comms, we're looking at 2 to 5. These would be GSAT future variants. So there are individual satellites for each service at the moment. So this looks like a continuation of the same ones that we have today. The numbers are quite pitiful, given, see, the number of platforms that we're going to put into use are going to be higher. The requirements for satellite communications will also be higher. Even if we assume that you can put more in a single satellite, say 5 years down the line compared to today, you still need redundancy. You still need, I hope people get the idea.
See,
You need
the
more than
specs
one, at
for
least.
the specs for these are exactly like the AEHF that America deploys. Okay, the specs for this, I'm sure the bit rates are contemporary, but the approx 44 gigahertz uplink and 20 gigahertz downlink is exactly the same as the advanced, extremely high frequency satellite of the Americans already deploy. And they deploy a few of them, right? So this is, and that's called AEHF. So this is a straight up analog essentially of that system.
Yeah,
This is
and
what they want here.
these satellites
Ah,
will cost a bomb, right? Each of them.
they
So
are
this is,
extremely expensive.
huh.
Extremely
So
expensive.
this is why
Ah,
you need the capability to do in orbit maintenance, propellant reloads, all of those things that we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. Because if they need to switch out some part of the satellite, add something to it, say 5 years down the line, add more propellant because you keep jinking around in space trying to get around Chinese in orbit shenanigans. You need all of those technologies to keep this thing running. It's like a race car, right? You need a whole host of people who can keep that thing running. Satellites are no longer this unobtainable thing that you just send up and other than move its orbit, do nothing else.
yeah,
Times have
but we
changed.
need, but we need game changers for space. The If we try to match the Chinese and the Americans, in terms of everything in space, then that's going to be very, very, very expensive. What we need is we need some different approaches to this problem. China, what it has done now is with its large economy, it has essentially now started copying America on every front. It is
Hmm.
now creating analogs to everything. It's just like the Soviets.
Yeah.
America had something, then the Soviets had to make that thing, try to make it a little better if possible, or try to make it a little cheaper. That was their approach. So the Chinese have gone down the same path now. They are doing the same thing over here. But in our case, given that our economy is maybe one fourth the size of the Chinese economy, or even if I assume that their economy is slightly inflated, say about maybe 30% of the Chinese economy, and of course in terms of PPP, we are better than that. But then when we talk about PPP, we are talking essentially about non-traded things, and assuming the quality is the same. So we have to use our comparative and competitive advantages in complex engineering projects to the hilt. But even then, we will not be able to match them constellation for constellation, AEHF for AEHF, etc., with the kind of budgets we are deploying. So we have to look at other approaches. We have to look at smarter approaches. We have to get into the arena of invention, not just catch up, not just catch up invention. Okay, we have to look at true innovation and new inventions altogether. So this is
I
now.
would say,
Uh,
yeah, I would say
yeah,
it's a
go
mix
ahead. Go
of
ahead.
both, right? So the question is, how much do you buy, right? So assuming most of it is Indian stuff, how much do you buy that you've created deterrence against the Chinese? For them to stop and think that we are powerful enough that if we get into a shooting war, then it'll drag on. It'll be a hard fought conflict, and it won't be an easy win. How much is enough, right? And assume that is within our means. Then at the same time, earmark some of your resources towards stuff that you're talking about. um, have a set of people who can sit and think of master strokes, game changers, whatever you might want to call it, but develop new technologies or weaponry or tactics or strategies that can help you win without having to spend so much. And even if it's not a reduction in spending, if it is an equivalent spending into something else that will give you a decisive advantage, that should be an aim in parallel to doing whatever we're doing currently. Yeah, whatever you're saying
Let's go.
makes absolutely
Let's go
sense.
to
A few
let's go to the
questions,
last few questions. Yeah, because we'll
yeah,
have to
and then we
wrap it up
can
for
do the rest
today.
of it next time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um 1 second, there was a question from somebody. Data da is saw inducted. Hey, thank you for your contribution, Data da. Thank you.
Yes. Thank
Like
you
we
for
keep
that.
saying, right? Your contributions are invaluable. Thank you so much.
And
Is
do keep sending them. Do keep
Yeah,
sending contributions,
yes.
whether via YouTube or directly to the
The
QR code that you
QPI
see.
ID and the QR code
Yeah,
are on screen. Is
everything
saw
is tagged.
inducted. There was a report about it being ready for mass production in 2022. Why do we still keep on buying weapons that we have capability to build? Sort of.
Yeah, well, I have seen I think limited series production of Saw must have begun, right? And whether it is inducted or not, I would let the military answer that. If they want to announce it, maybe they'll announce it in very in a glorious manner, if you know what I mean. Uh,
Achanak
so,
Suryodaya Yojana.
uh, otherwise, but I can tell you the development of the baseline saw, that is the one that does not have a EOIR front end, right? That was done a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I don't see any issue over there. Okay, second question.
User
XA101, thank you for
XA101.
your
Yeah.
contribution. Yeah, yeah.
Good. Good. Good.
Does GeoI plans to develop CVD and DUV? CVD has already been developed, right? You have a certain DRDO lab with CVD capability. The real issue is CVI, chemical vapor infiltration. That is what you need for being able to produce ceramic matrix composites in bulk. CVD
Yeah.
won't cut it. DUV,
We use
Shriram, why don't
LSI
you
right now.
answer that? Do you think DUV makes sense for India?
Uh, See, we have no base. That's the problem. The Chinese operate off a mega solid base of having operated extremely large number of fabs, semiconductor, factories, some of their own, some of them of global semiconductor manufacturers, and they have a long-standing plan of sending in people there, learning stuff, bringing back technology, and trying things on their own. So they are developing these things not just because they operate these fabs, but they also build a lot of components and machinery that go into these fabs, right? So they, I mean, even if you take the DUV thing, right, EUV or DUV, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of stuff that goes into such a machine, they already make. Right, we're talking about sensors, lasers, all sorts of electronics, precision, gear, motors, power delivery systems, control logic, all of that. Right, so it's not. I mean, even the optics part of it. Right, so they make all of these big lens makers and optics companies have have set up factories in China. Right, so they have across the board. Even if you don't want to be charitable and call it capability, they still have established factories and setups in their country who do all of these things. We have practically none. How many SLR lenses are made in India?
Yeah,
right.
now,
So you imagine the challenge, right? So you imagine the gap. We do not have an industry to base out of to create a next generation product. We're getting there. We will get there. If the government wants to, they can set up a 1,000 crore fund, get people from abroad and get people from within India, put them together and say, this is your IGMDP, do it. We've seen zero enthusiasm to do something like that. Anyway, next question.
Yeah. Next question is okay. Akshay here is asking, tried sending mail but didn't reach. Hope all good. Yeah, all is good. I've given you my email right below your comment. Take a look at that. Send it again. I'll check.
Okay, yeah, we're back on. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
we are back.
Thanks to
wiped
Bestcom,
out.
we lost a little connectivity in between.
Which is why I'm saying that, anyway. So whatever, bottom line is this, that we are back online. We were not wiped out in a missile strike, which was preceded by an EMP attack or something. So we are going to bring this episode to a close. Thank you for the support. We are going to make this program more regular than it is at the moment. We will keep coming back every week. We might introduce a program we might introduce a midweek program as well. We are working on that because we have a lot of other things to do, as you will learn soon enough. But at the same time, we are as ever committed to supporting the cause of indigenization directly and indirectly, both. Right, and indigenization appreciation hour is our offering to our country in a way, apart from other things that we are doing, and hopefully those will also be accepted by the country. So we will keep doing this. So keep supporting us, make it easier for us to keep bringing this program to you on a more regular basis. And with that, we are going to call it a night.
One quick thing, Balakrishna Prabhu, I think. Thank you so much.
Yes, Balkrishna Babu, in case you missed the last part, you are our truest supporter. And if we give a supporter of the year badge at the end of this year, you are probably going to win it hands down. Okay. So
thank you so much.
With that, good night. Jai Hind.
Bye-bye.